Point hour, 1:30. Call the meeting to order and open with an opportunity for public comment. Anyone having something that's not already on the agenda, now's the time. Anyone calling in? Do we have anyone online?
There's a Chris. That he's
Let's try Chris Bradford.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Chris Bradford. Sorry. He's part of my group. There's no last name.
All right, very good. Now let me do this one. We can, okay, there's no, so apparently no public comment. So we'll move on to item 3. We have the minutes in hand of our previous meeting on September 29. We need action on that.
Move to approve the meeting minutes of September 29 as presented.
I second.
Move seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, we'll move into the body of the meeting now. We have two discussion items that are on the agenda. The first one being for the Housing Redevelopment Authority, Area Cumberland Executive Director. Is that the thing?
That is the title.
Okay, just making sure. Yeah.
All the choice that come with it. So, and if you could let Chris also speak, he's gonna give a little bit more to this. So there's gonna be 3 things I'm gonna chat about, but the first, you should have a copy of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund budget for 2022. So we're expecting an increase just from the number of homes and the recording fees. So Chris and his staff have put together a plan to basically allocate some of those funds to some new areas. They've seen some increased need in some other areas. So Chris, if you're available and you don't mind talking a bit.
Sure. Thanks, Mary. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thanks for the opportunity to present the Affordable Housing Trust Fund budget. As Mary indicated, there were increases in recording the fees for adjacent mortgages in 2021. Based on that, we're going to be carrying over a healthy balance. In addition, the projection from the county for 2022 also shows an increase. So basically, the budget in 2021 was $180,000. We're projecting a $100,000 increase based on the carryover and a conservative estimate of the increase in the fees recording these mortgages. So the projected amount would be $280,000. We're going to propose to increase the amount of money available for down payment and closing cost assistance in our first-time home buyers program, going from $130,000 to $160,000. Our emergency program, repair program, we want to increase that. Basically, what happens is, particularly during the winter, we see people have issues with their furnaces and need emergency assistance to get those furnaces up and running. So, we project or request an increase from $15,000 to $30,000 in 2022. Also, housing counseling. We have a housing counselor who is now HUD certified and has been providing one-on-one counseling services to low moderate income individuals. And we requested a $20,600 to cover the costs associated with that program. On housing development, we're looking to do more housing development in the future years and request $30,000 to cover soft cost loans that would be paid back when the property goes to settlement. And then also routinely, the county administrative fee is 5% of the total budget, which would be $9,800 in 2022. And for the Redevelopment Authority Administration, $19,600, and that's 10% of the overall budget. So that's the major ticket increases for 2022. If you have any questions or comments, I'll be happy to address those.
Hey, Chris, this is Vince, and it might be just the way I'm reading the numbers, but for 2021, the receipts you have listed as 180,000. Now the carryover of 84,000 in 2022, is that 84 part of the 180, Or is that in addition to the 180 from
That's in
2021?
addition to the one, I'm sorry, Commissioner, that's in addition to the 180.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, I appreciate your time.
And the other two items, you recall, Chris and I talked a little bit to the commissioners about moving our CDBG here. And everyone agreed and now we're working through that process with HUD, but the year goes from January to now July. Well, that leaves us basically 6 months of no administrative fees to cover our time. So we'll be asking for we estimated to be about $123,000 to cover those 6 months essentially. Then we go back to our normal CDBG admin allocation, which would cover the following year. So that is something that the redevelopment authority would request. And then we will be requesting an allocation last year was made to cover our downtown program coordinator manager. That was about $20,000. We'll be asking for the same thing this year, but Rebecca would like to come and provide as much information as she can for the work that she's done, Rebecca here. And she would like to give it her sort of annual update. So she's working on that right now, and I'll schedule another time for her to come and present. So if you have any additional questions for her that you'd like her to prepare, please let me know, and I'll make sure that she includes any additional statistics or information, and we'll be back with that. Okay. Good. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
So our second topic for today is the P25 radio update, and Shaggy, Safety Director, is going to present it.
Commissioners and our colleagues, we just wanted to come and provide a project update. We have been working for really a couple of years in the planning stages in preparation for some tower site work, and are now at the point where we'd like to provide results from our radio advisory board. I will mention the radio advisory board. We have representation from each of the different emergency services disciplines. So from fire, Chief O'Donnell, from Shippensburg and Carlisle, Chief Murdoch, who's with us today from Lower Allen Township. EMS, we have Chief Dwayne Nieves and Assistant Chief James Wettrick from, James is from Cumberland Goodwill EMS. Dwayne is from Penn State Health EMS. And Fire Police, Mike Lux with us today. He's our countywide Fire Police Special Police Emergency Response Team Chief, as well as Brad Mattern from Hampton Township. Police, we have Public Safety Director Dave Hall, who's also on the Chiefs of Police Association, as well as Chief Junkin from Hampton Township. And then municipal officials are Ken Martin, Commissioner from Upper Allen, Nate Silcox, Commissioner from Hampton, and Wayne Myers from the Western Cumberland Cog and West Pennsbury Township. So that's been the group we've been working with. It's an expanded version of what we had with our external advisory board. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our consultant, Mike Brown from SSC, and run through the PowerPoint and where we're at. Great.
Thank you, Commissioners. Again, it's been a long time, and all of the COVID delays and all the other things we've been working on, but we've been steady at it now for several months, including this tower site. So I wanted to give you an update first on kind of what we had done before, picking up from where we left off, and then get into the advisory board and some of the hard work they've put in to get to this point as well. So the activity since the last update, the two sites that we had requested and received approval to start construction on are underway. We have some information on that. We did the radio and demo exhibit for both L3 Harris and Motorola radios for all the public safety agencies down at the public safety building. It was extremely well received, and we have some information on that. The advisory board developed a survey for vendor selection and jurisdictional partnerships that they completed internally. And we have those results for you today as well. And the advisory board, we're going to provide the results, excuse me. The Land Gap Tower site, as you know, we've been working very diligently on that. We actually are building a site right next to the existing site. The current site did not meet the structural integrity that the new standards now have. The site was obviously, has been around there for a couple of decades and it needed to be replaced. This is not unusual when you get into new communications equipment. While lots of the equipment is much lighter and has less wind load, in many cases, the demand for wireless communications is much greater than it was 20 years ago. So even as we do things more efficiently, the demand increases. And for that, we wanted to make sure that we had the latest technology both in your sites and your system. And to that end, we have started with construction, working with Tower Services Unlimited. They've been an excellent partner with the county for some time. They've done a lot of site work for you all. They were on the CoStar's contract and had all of the pricing that we could use. And as you know, we engaged them for the construction. This is a picture of the foundation that's being poured with a rebar and the tower that's going up right now as we speak. I think we're, how many hundreds of feet are we up?
We're at least 80, if not 100 by now.
As of right now, they're craning the steel up. So that site's going very well. We're currently working on the 3 Square Hollow Tower site. We ran into a little snafu with lines. Of course, it's right on the county line, and it's also on state land. So we needed to work with the state and make sure we had the surveys correct. The last thing we wanted to do was build something on someone else's land and then find out later that they wanted to charge us for it. So the best thing to do was to do our due diligence. We had a survey done thanks to Brian and some of his contacts. He got it done very quickly, which is not easy in these days to get surveys done quickly. And we are now back on track. We're actually meeting out there with DCNR tomorrow to talk about what forest needs to be cut down and where the site's going to go and identifying that one last time. We know where we'd like to put it. We just need to make sure that we're not cutting down anything that is important to them or that we're reforesting whatever it is that we can in replacing that. The very first thing we started doing when we met with the advisory board was talking about the 2 main competitors of public safety communication systems. I don't think this is a surprise to everyone. Around the country, you'll either read articles or you'll be a part of conversations, whether Motorola or L3Harris is the vendor. Certainly, we've talked about that for quite some time, about how to select them. And we went through and we compared all of the different system features. This is the example of that, or a snapshot of that. Certainly, it may be German when you're reading it, but the reality is they're very like systems. Back 20 years ago, when the federal government made P25, the whole intent was to make it a competitive market. What was happening before is everybody made their own flavors, and that made it very difficult to both interoperate with each other, and it also made it very difficult to select someone, and it allowed them to price gouge because they could say, hey, we'll give you the sites for free, but we're going to charge you, 50 million for your radios, or hey, we're going to give you the sites for 50 million, and we'll give you your radios for free. This made it to where now you can buy whatever system you want and whatever radios you want to work on them. And this is kind of proof of that these systems are so much alike now that they really are able to be used one against the other, both for pricing and for operational use. And then we went ahead and developed the actual features that Cumberland County wanted for their system. These systems can be purchased with different levels of encryption. They can be purchased with the ability to, over the air, change those encryption keys. And if someone was to steal a radio, you have the ability to have multiple different talk groups, or you can have limited talk groups, the functionality at the dispatch center. We went through all those demands that the county and the end users wanted, and basically we came up with a list of features for the radios. This was also that the jurisdictions had the ability to budget for their radios in the upcoming years. We did this with list pricing because we know we're going to be able to do better than that. Typically, the vendors will provide at least 25% discount. I feel like it's my job to make sure they do better than that, to be quite honest. But we know that initially when they start after somewhere around 25%. So as a list price, we felt that was a good budgetary number. And then the agencies took those features because they charge for every feature in every radio. And we did that for both Motorola and for L3Harris. So that no matter which radio they purchased versus which system of the county purchased, it would not matter because the radios would work on each other's systems. And that was very important to both the end users because there are some interoperability, there are some demands to buy radios earlier than later. There are some features they wanted specific to their mutual aid to other counties. All of those things were in consideration, and we developed this list together to have a list for both vendors. And that resulted in, as you can imagine, lots of different radios and lots of models. They give you different models depending on the demand for the radio. Certainly some radios having the ability to be submerged or get wet for a very long time versus radios that may be used in a much less compelling operational environment. Then those two things really drive the price. And you can see that when you look at the different ranges from 3,600 to 10,600, it really then becomes a choice for the end user agencies to decide what they need. If you're a firefighter and you're going inside of a building and the radio is getting hot and it's getting wet, then that certainly drives one type of radio versus maybe someone who's in public utilities or is outside, but the radio is protected and it's not inside of a demanding type of environment. It may be much less expensive. So that's kind of what drives all these different prices, and that the result was a pretty good range. So the radio exhibit we had pretty much from 2 o'clock until about 8, somewhere around there. We were full of people coming through, different agencies and different personnel. We had L3 Harris and Motorola set up right against each other, right in the same room. I find that to be very advantageous for the customers because competition is good for us. They don't love it so much, I'll be honest. Neither one of them were really excited about that. They like to have their own time. They were very pressing that we'd like to meet with you independently. We find it's best if they get to sit in the same room and look at one another while we're doing that. So while that's not always comfortable for everyone, it will result in the best pricing and the best options for the county, I believe, and for the end user agencies. Following that, we put out a survey at the request of public safety to find out basically what they were thinking when they got done as far as who they were going with. Again, the radios work on either system, so it's not driving the cost or the price or the selection of the infrastructure, but just to try to get a snapshot of what people are thinking. And right now, of the 31 agencies, 9 were planning to purchase Motorola radios, 7 are planning to purchase L3 Harris radios, 15 are undecided, and we expect that's probably because they want to wait and see what's purchased as far as the infrastructure and then just go in that direction. We're not positive of that, but that's typically what happens. You know, if you're undecided and it doesn't matter, then you may just decide to go with whoever the system is purchased by anyway. Stop me anyway, but anywhere you'd like, by the way. I know I'm going through this pretty quickly and I don't intend to skip over anything. So following that, the radio advisory board thought it was important to really get an understanding of what the advisory board members were thinking. Now, keep in mind, I think we had talked about this before, we were trying to come up with what was important for Cumberland County as far as cost sharing or regional sharing, as well as whether or not you would be protected in the future for the ability to have your own communication system in the event any partnership didn't go well. And that's kind of what's been driving us the entire time. And we had talked to the state about partnering, and a long time ago, as you may remember, that did not go very well. They aren't putting any state sites in Cumberland County right now, but I'm pretty sure when you build your system, the state's going to want to put their radios on your system. So that partnership is not an advantage to your county, I don't believe personally. This is my opinion. However, we know that you're going to be providing mutual aid with them. You're going to be working with them. So there is going to be a demand from them sooner or later to work with you on your system because they do it today.
So you're basically saying we would have discretion to say no, but we don't really have discretion to say no.
That's probably fair. But I think that that it may be a discussion for what things you could work on together to help each other out. Because they're going to be getting an awful lot of resources and coverage and communications that they don't have today as a result of your thoughtfulness or negotiation. So the advisory board said, listen, we understand, because we spent several meetings going back and forth about what is a better partner technically, what is a better partner in a partnership, whether that partnership matters as far as their relationship. And we thought it best, and thanks to the public safety, the radio advisory board, they developed the questions, they sent it out, and they completed the survey. And these are examples. So we started out with the jurisdictional partnerships, and to be honest with you, there's really only 2 that make sense for Cumberland County. One is York County, and that's an L3 Harris system, and the Tri-County system, which is Dauphin, Adams, and Franklin County, and that's a Motorola system. So when you're looking at regional partnerships and they're close enough to make sense for Cumberland County, they're really the 2 options. And you can see through the questions, and I certainly can read through them to give you a general idea, but probably most importantly, if you look from the York County options to the Tri-County system, whether you're asking the stability of the partnership, the history of the partnerships, or whether we're rating the partner based on their level of experience, whether the partnership is a long-term, has any long-term recurring costs in comparison. Almost all of them are nearly double weighted towards the Tri-County system and the Motorola system. I don't think this is unusual. The state has had a lot of issues with L3Harris in the past. Everyone knows that, and I think this is indicative of those issues that are still lingering, if you will. And certainly I'll ask anybody to chime in if you feel any differently, but that's an impression that I had. And then subsequently, we asked about the actual vendor and said, listen, based on what you know. Now, you have to understand, too, the advisory board, there's different levels of understanding of communication systems. We don't expect anyone to be an engineer. But I can tell you, in every single case, when you're buying these systems, if you don't have the confidence of the end users, it will fail. It doesn't matter about anything else. We can build the most beautiful communication system, but at the end of the day, the person holding the radio has to have confidence in what happens. And that's in every case that I've worked on around the country. And we've done 175 of these around the country. So when I say that, that's really important. Okay.
So the question I have on that is, are we confident that the preferences are being driven by facts, or to what degree are they driven by perhaps long-standing biases?
No, I don't think that. I wouldn't say it's fair to say they're long-standing biases. I think on the partnership side, there's a little more of an opinion because, we're talking about partnerships that haven't really been developed yet. Cumberland isn't a partner of the Tri-County system, so we're going based on what we know, right? And the same thing with York County and some histories and some understanding of some things that have happened over there in the past as well. But when it comes to these systems, the radio advisory board personnel have also used these systems in other jurisdictions, and they're familiar with both the Tri-County system, York County, and P25. I will tell you they are very familiar with that. Now, does everybody understand what a VAST server is and a 4300 series router, for a site or for a system? Not necessarily. But when it comes to the operational, I would say that they have a strong handle on what this means.
I guess what I was getting at, should have been more clear, was whether it's driven by the branding. How much of it is driven by branding versus? I'm going to defer to you guys on that. I don't get that impression. I think if we said the brand name was resulting from some history in previous, because the state and some of the things we've talked about, maybe in that situation, but I think there's a lot of fact to that the advisory board brought to the table and made their feelings well known about. But I'll defer to you guys on that if you don't mind, and then tell me what you think.
And I'm only one of the many, but for me, I've used both, and I certainly have a preference to the one that indicated what my responses were. I think from an operational point of view and an interoperability point of view, and the way that you access multiple systems, the one clearly rose above the other, which is what influenced me. So it really went down to functional interoperability and an operation of the individual systems. And I used both, one in a different career, location career, and the other one when I was with state government. So I understand the transition that the state made as well, for many of the reasons they made. So it just made sense to me in my analysis, what my responses were individually. I can't speak for obviously for the entire group.
I'm sorry, when you were with the Commonwealth, where were you?
I was a deputy director at EMA.
Okay. Substantial. Very good.
Be a little bit of experience. You have anything to add? Or?
Just kind of echoing what Director Hall said, that it's more from experience in the functionality of systems, and back to rating the partnerships, being around the border of York County and responding to Fairview and other parts of York County often. And we run into a lot of issues with their communication center and how they function. And I'll put on record bluntly that it's happened that they'll dispatch a York County unit into Cumberland County just because they got the 911 call. They don't know where the border ends. Call their supervisor up and go, "What are you doing?" And they don't really care. And that concerns me as a chief, that what kind of operation do they have going on down there? Do we really want that as a partnership? Where we do respond to Dauphin County and don't have issues there. And I just thought that was a better operational fit. So that kind of went the same way as Director Hall did.
Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I've used both systems, Motorola and the Harris system. It just comes down to how much confidence I have, reliability, downtime, those type of things. At the end of the day, I don't care what infrastructure is in the facility. I care that my radio works and it works consistently, especially if we have to hold emergency. So that's the reason I gave my responses.
And from a technical standpoint, we've obviously worked with customers that have gone in each direction. And we know that they can be engineered and built and functional and meet the expectations, right? But the reality is, at the end of the day, we're back to the confidence of the people who are going to be using the system. And because they are so light now, 20 years later in P25, where they are so light, the pricing is no longer hidden, and it's no longer able to be manipulated in a used car salesman type of way. Everybody in the last 20 years has bought P25 systems. We can see those pricing. We know what the pricing should be, and then we work to leverage the things that are important about Cumberland County to get a better price for you. But it's no longer really, it isn't apples to apples. So selecting one or the other, the confidence really is important, more so than it probably ever has been. Very helpful, thank you.
And I think as far as that input too, when we started this process, we did drive to multiple other states, agencies, and every good or bad, every lesson learned, the first thing they told us was to have a good advisory board with a wide variety of input from the emergency services. If they're not involved from the start, then the system will fail. So, I mean, we heard that loud and clear really everywhere we went.
Yeah. It's very difficult to regain confidence in something. It's you only get one slice at that, unfortunately. And public safety, and I resemble this, we're very fickle. So when it comes time and something goes bad, we think it's bad until you fix it, and that's hard to get back. So and I don't want to speak for the group either. But,
Let me interject also. We talked on our calls, and I feel very firm about this, that as the advisory board, part of our responsibility now is reporting to our constituents in major fire chiefs associations and so on, of supporting the direction, explaining why we did the survey. Here's the data. Here's why we made that decision. But supporting the county and supporting public safety and explaining that to our constituents so they understand why these decisions were made and based upon what. So we're not just here to sell it today, or we're just on the committee and it's done. This is we're in for the long haul in support of moving this forward and supporting everybody that we work with.
And I said on calls, and Mike did that. I said, I'm relatively short timer on this, looking at a system which will be, commissioners will make a decision that will be 20 years, maybe plus, on whatever this is. I said, I don't want to be sitting in my RV or my retirement center with somebody like call me on the phone going like, why the heck did you make that decision? This isn't something that's a decision for today. This is a decision that's going to ripple through the public safety providers in this county for years to come. And that actually has helped drive our thought processes as we kind of toss this around and beat it up among us. So that's how we arrive where we are.
Exactly. So that leads us to the next part. We said, okay, then looking at a partnership with the Tri-County system, what are the advantages to that? And I'll be honest, we have had some passionate discussions about what that really means and what the advantages or disadvantages. I have opinions technically, and there's other opinions operationally, and none of them are wrong. I will say that. You won't be wrong in whichever way you go. You'll have a great system. So some of the things that we know that are both good and a challenge are that they have the Belgian Franklin systems are UHF, and Cumberland will be 800 or 700-800 frequencies. That is a challenge for interoperability, but we know that there are make radios that will talk on both. They're a little more expensive, and we talked about making that challenge by providing multi-band radios to talk on both in the areas that do mutual aid to each other. So it's not an unsurmountable challenge, but it's something that we have to keep on the front burner to make sure we don't miss. That there's a governance board for the tri-counties, and if you're a part of that, and you're a part of the governance board, but as a committee goes, there are some meetings and challenges and waiting and working together, and that's not neither good or bad. It's just that's the way it is. If you don't know your own, then it can be challenging sometimes, or it may be a beautiful marriage. they could be that way as well. And they did say they would welcome additional sites added to the system. So you could add all of your tower sites to their system and connect to their cores. We had talked to Motorola about the possibility of taking and adding a third server core, which would be responsible for Cumberland County system as a redundancy. Motorola said they will not be able to do that. That is not something they have in the design of their systems. So the two cores that they have there today, one is in Dolphin and one is in Adams. Those two cores would be responsible for operating the Cumberland County system. They currently do receive some funding to help maintain their system. So this is where it gets interesting. So I talked to Motorola as well, and the state provides some funding to help maintain the Tri-County system. As far as Cumberland County, that means you would be getting the advantage of them helping maintain the cores, the server cores that control the system. It does not add any additional maintenance dollars to help out Cumberland County to maintain all of your sites, your towers, your base stations, or any of that. So you do get the advantage of the cores that you would not have to purchase, and you do get the ability to have that maintained by state money that the Tri-County certainly does receive.
That's actually 911 money that's out of the 911 fund. And I sit on the 911 advisory board as well through the PA chiefs. And so I know that money is available, some of it to fund portions of it, but it's all part of your eligibility. You guys do that all the time. But that is a nice perk.
It's a nice perk. And the rub then becomes whether the amount that you get for that maintenance is worth the juice that the squeeze gets you for having your own cores. And neither, by the way, stops you from interoperating with the Tri-County system. They can be connected together even if you have your own cores. So the partnership with South Central Interop and the ability to communicate between those systems will be there either way. We just haven't quite gotten past the next part of what does it really mean for the county and working through those operations. But I think it's obvious through the advisory board's results from the survey that they would like to go with Motorola. They would like to go with the South Central Interop system. And to that extent, we know that Motorola is on CoStar's state contract. All of the equipment and services are on there as well. It allows us to communicate directly with them and start designing the system that works for Cumberland County. A lot of people will tell you that RFP is, if you go to RFP, you get the best price. But I will tell you, I've done this both ways. And my impression is that if you can work off of a contract and work directly with someone, then you can make sure you're getting what you want as you work through the process, instead of you're kind of putting it out there, you get back what they think will do the job, and it does not always do the job. It does not always do the job. And too often, you don't end up with exactly what you wanted or needed, because at the end of the day, you didn't get to design along the way.
You're referring specifically to CoStar's, as you go through the
For
CoStar?
this would be CoStar's, correct? Yep.
They can't charge more than CoStar's, but you can beat them up to less.
Right. Yeah. Again, that's my job, right? On behalf of you guys, and certainly you guys too. I'm not looking to do that by myself, but I have a lot of experience with working with vendors to negotiate pricing. I understand how their accounting works. I know what they've done for other jurisdictions, and our job is to leverage that on your behalf. And we're actually requesting to begin working with Motorola right now, if that's something that you're acceptable to have us do, and utilize the CoStar's contract as the purchase vehicle, and continue the discussions with the regional partnership to figure out the best way that fits for Cumberland County. Operationally, financially, all of those things should be considered. Some of the technology that I believe is going to come out will drive whether that makes sense, and then we'll work with the advisory board to go down that path. And I think that working with the vendors and the agencies to identify all the subscriber needs and leverage pricing on their behalf, as well as designing the system with a vendor, would be the best scenario for Cumberland County in the end. It also, I'll be honest with you, vendors put a ton of money and time into responding to RFPs. One of the things I started out with is, you don't have to respond and we expect that money back. while you're not sitting there and competing. So right off the gate, I know what you spend on that, and I expect to have that back from Cumberland County. That's it.
Are you using the terms servers and core interchangeably?
I was, and I apologize.
No, I
It's
just,
more of a habit than anything because I talk it so much. So
well, and which is leads to my next question then, because if you weren't, I was going to change my question.
Okay.
So if I've heard and remembered correctly, if we partnered with Tri-County, they would have two servers, two cores.
Correct. They're here, separate, and redundant to each other. Yeah.
We would then not need two cores because we would go with theirs.
That's correct.
Okay. Could we do both?
Yes, you can. You could actually have two cores and still interoperate with the Tri-Counties. You certainly could.
And one of the reasons I'm asking that is when I think about a server or a core going down, what happens? If we only have two,
That's
and
right.
now we've added another county to that server, and one or both of those servers goes down, then what the heck happens?
True. And your point is exactly right. So my concern, my biggest concern for Cumberland County was if the frequencies that you have require two cells of coverage and two cells of tower coverage, that if we put these server cores several microwave hops away in different counties and we lose connectivity, those cells become their own. People can communicate within them, they can still communicate back to the dispatch, but they are individual cells at that point. Now, does it save you $500,000 in servers? It very well could. And does it save you $50,000 a year in maintenance? It very well could. But in a very large purchase like this, that is not necessarily the biggest concern. The biggest concern is I just spent a ton of money to put the system in, and how do we keep this up and running for public safety at all costs? So that's my technical understanding, and I'm going to ask if you guys feel differently or if you have any opinion on that. I mean, I know everybody's trying to do the right thing interoperability wise and to partner, but there is nothing better than having your own resources to take care of the stuff you purchased.
Well, and so I even think about, if something, let's say something happened in Dauphin County, I'm making an assumption that they could get onto the Cumberland County server then.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, right,
Yeah.
so then we would also be making life in Dauphin County for the people that live there a lot better too.
Oh, I should say that when you purchase your own cores, you will be redundant to yourself, but they still cannot connect them to their servers. Now, their two servers are the only servers that will work on their system, and the only option you have is to connect your sites to them or not, and whether you have your own cores or not.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're right. So I would love that if that was the case, and that's what even the Motorola engineers that I spoke to want that, but that's not the design of their system right now.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about like one of those huge public safety emergencies that we're hoping never happens.
Exactly.
But if it does, how are we going to communicate amongst all of these counties? What are we going to do to?
That's one of the, I guess, advantages in their architecture right now with having geodiverse cores. Often one which is in Steel and Harrisburg, and the other one's in Gettysburg at Adams County, not one. The whole system runs on one core. The other one's just sitting there idle. Just like in many applications, CAD systems with dual servers and sometimes regional phone systems, same concept. It's not both processing, one's standing by, ready to go. Any one tower site or dispatch center, just could be one, loses connection to this core, the other core will run it. As long as those two cores can still talk, that one site can go to that opposite core, come back, and everybody's still wide talking.
Okay.
Now, if you have a massive failure and you have several connections, say every connection between Dauphin County and Adams County goes away, for whatever reason, huge tornado, earthquake, whatever, things are moving epic. Dauphin's core can run Dauphin, Adams' core will still run Adams and Franklin.
Right. That's exactly right.
And an example in their system, Franklin County today is running on those two cores, does not have anything in the back room, and it does not even have what's called an edge backup server. And since the system was implemented, Franklin County has not gone down.
Okay.
Yep. So that's exactly right. You're right.
I'm knocking
No.
Mr. Brown's saying,
Not at all.
having your own there, yes, it could give you a little more percentage of potential reliability. It's not massive, it's not a doubling, because there is redundant links, they're redundant. and the cores back up each other, and any site can route to either core, and there's multiple layers there. But more equipment drives more cost, drives more recurring costs. If you kind of do your own box, yes, you can interoperate. There's ways to do it at various levels of interoperability. Some are pretty seamless, also have cost to do it that way, but it's not really riding on that other system though. You're still kind of doing your thing you're doing by connections, where if you're on that system, you can very easily share talk groups and roam talk groups between the tower sites. You know, it's eventually it could be a 4-county regional system that you could with one radio, multi-band, because different frequencies. Roam seamlessly without turning your knob from up the Dauphin County all the way down to Maryland line and Franklin County.
Yep. All true. Yeah, I don't disagree with anything he's saying. So it really becomes
I'd say, to my mind, it's two factors. One, it's a faith, trust in the decision, as we talked about, coming from the committee. And two, there's a cost factor.
And I think some of that is from my point, from a technical standpoint, I'll make a recommendation technically, of redundancy in my impression and my experience. But that doesn't mean it's right for everyone. The partnership with the tri-counties and connecting, you have the same capabilities that you would have, as long as you don't lose that connection. And I would do everything in my power to make sure those connections were as redundant as they could be. But I feel I'm compelled from my responsibility to at least share that with you.
But it comes to, that's a question of optimization, obviously. So we have the fundamental question technically is how much redundancy do you need? How much is it worth to you?
That's exactly
so.
There's also a factor too, if you join the existing regional, whether it be your or the tri-county system, either one, when you partner that, you can leverage services or features they already have purchased. You can leverage and use those. And maybe if there's other ones they don't have that you desire, you can then bring them to the table and maybe they can benefit from that. So that's where the partnerships can get advantageous of the counties working together.
One of the historical examples in Pennsylvania, we funded this through the task forces, Region 13, which is 13 counties, western and southwestern part of Pennsylvania. Westmoreland County hosts the core, single core for that radio system. They are all on the same radio system, distributed radio system. I talked to Glenn Burtz, their emergency management coordinator. He said, in his knowledge, since he's been there, they've not been down. And he knows that system has been down maybe 5-10 minutes, and since it's been installed. Now they are looking at adding another core to that system, which will sit in another county. And they're also looking at edge technology, which they currently also don't have. So it's the reliability that you're trying to get to. Reliability comes with cost, as Mike said. So the question is, there's a technical question and there's a money question.
That's right. Exactly. Yep.
So do we look at those types of track records to assess a degree of probability in doing that?
Yeah, and we know that I'll give you an example with the microwave paths to connect towers up. Anyone that builds them will tell you that they're 5 nines of reliability, which means, it'll be down, whatever it is, 5 minutes out of a year or something at the most. And then you have a second path so that if it ever fails, it goes the other direction. And yet you will talk to customers, and I can share them with you that have had them fail. Because the way that they put them up and test them, they test them for 24 hours, and then they test them around the ring for 24 hours, and they say it's good. And then the reality is things do happen. So I give you the technical answer, and I could just say, yep, 5 nines is good enough, we can do whatever. But I am going to give you my impression, and sometimes my technical impression may go against operational, but it's not because we're not working together. It's because I think we have a responsibility to each other to actually challenge each other on that.
So now, when you're talking about these two different cores, you mentioned something about there's multiple handoffs or relays between the microwave. How many are there?
Well, you hope you have a redundant path back to the servers themselves from each of the sites, from each of the tower sites. And that goes into the design of basically a ring. You could have multiple rings inside of your county, depending on what sites can see each other. But the idea is to make sure that every site has a different path to get back to the server so that you don't lose communications. That's a part of the design that we will be working with.
There's built-in routing, so that if one path fails, the routing automatically reroutes the signal. so you don't lose that. That's what the 5 nines architecture is kind of about. You know, that built-in redundancy.
Okay, sounds good.
So this is probably a very silly question, but I think about maintenance on every piece of computer equipment I own in my home, and it is expensive. And boy, if you think you're gonna miss one, it doesn't work. It ends up being far more expensive in the end.
Yep.
So what is the maintenance like on, if we go ahead and we purchase our own cells, what's the maintenance like? And how comfortable should we be relying on the maintenance of a different group of, let's say, the Tri-County group or the York group?
I think, I'm not sure about the Tri-County and their group as far as how they would maintain it. I will tell you in general, so out of hundreds of clients, you either maintain it with a shop that's authorized by the manufacturer, or you maintain it from the manufacturer themselves, who often sub it out to a shop that of their choice, right? And a system of your size, after you're done, and assuming that you had an entire system that you own, the cores and all of the sites, and assuming based on our coverage expectations, if it's somewhere around 17 to 20 sites, then it would be somewhere around $500,000 a year to maintain the system. And that's just that is a shot in the dark ballpark, but it's based on experience for these type of systems and these sizes.
Those authorized, manufacturer authorized parts, so there's
That's correct.
a significant number of those.
As far as the vendors, yes.
Okay.
Yep. And they have response times, so we would help you develop that to make sure to meet your needs. There's a 30-minute callback, a 4-hour response time, and often a 24-hour restart or to get it back up and running. And you put those requirements in, and then those requirements typically drive the spare parts that you have on hand to make sure that you have the spare parts to get you back up and running if things fail. And then that cost obviously is built into your maintenance. If you say, for instance, the redundancy of the system often doesn't require you to have somebody out on weekends and night times, and you could handle it during business days. I wouldn't recommend that for public safety, but I'm just saying that that's an option for some utilities. Then it gets much cheaper and you have less spare parts. So that's really where our job comes in to say, hey, listen, at the end of the day, if you want to maintain this thing for public safety and protect your investment, there is some cost to that, but we know what that should be too. The other part of that is you don't want to do this 20 years ago, or 20 years from now. So we want to try to build in what we call obsolescence build, which every so many years, the vendor is required to upfit your network and your gear to make sure that this thing is new or like new at 20 years from now, and that you're getting the same services. You don't get any new stuff. You want something new, you got to buy it, right? So, but I don't mean new equipment, but I mean new features. But all of your equipment would be brand new at the end of 20 years. You would have a system that you can continue to use for another 20.
Assuming the standards remain essentially the same.
Well, their requirement would be to update you to the newest standards to provide you the same functionality you have today, so you would still be good into the future. Absolutely.
So what, and the future proofing question is one I think.
Yeah.
It's going on the back of our head, especially given past history. So
Sure.
on that sense, so is there, these things are in the hands of other people, but for instance, in the past, the infringement on spectrum that fundamentally changed what your system can do.
Right.
Do we feel we have a good handle on where the technology, or I even say that, where the technology is moving, that we feel there's not going to be an underlying significant change that's just not obsolete help of this stuff?
Yeah, I'll tell you the two things that drive that. So right now, we thought we had a handle on it, right? And then we had the next health thing, and everybody had to reband. And then we thought we had a handle on it, and then the FCC split the frequencies and required people to split frequencies so that you could get more capacity. And that changed coverage, and that changed the amount of frequencies you had to have. So you're right. As much as we know, yes, we are good into the future with the licenses that you have. I think that was proven recently in the fact that your frequencies that you have are a commodity. I mean, we talked about this at the last meeting where there was a lot of discussion. Well, do we go to the state and VHF and allow them to use their channels? And I can tell you that the 800 frequencies that Cumberland County people would love to have. And if you don't think so, talk to your county to replace their T-band system and put a 700 megahertz system in when the frequencies became available at the tune of $26 million. So that's how large the commodity is that you have with your frequencies. So I think that you're in really good shape in the band that you have and the frequencies that you have. It doesn't mean that there's not some relicensing that needs to happen. Your current open sky architecture does not match P25, which is good. because you want it to change. We're changing the coverage, we're changing the technology. Everybody knows, everybody here, everyone, including me, has said coverage is the #1 priority of the system. Getting inside the buildings for the first responders, and that is the #1 driver for everything that we're doing. So,
like all those repeaters and everything that everybody built into their buildings or mandated through ordinance, is that all obsolete then?
Well, no, not necessarily.
they're not.
Okay.
They will need to be retuned, but they're not obsolete and they can be used on P25.
Okay.
Yep.
The total novice question, because I don't know what I'm talking about. 5G, is that impact this?
Does not at all. Just not totally.
I know I'm going to get asked that.
Understood. Yep.
But the, every time the Harris's name comes up, I think I asked you this before, but they more or less announced that they want to focus on DoD contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Does that in any way change the trajectory of the competitive environment?
No. I'll be honest with you, the DoD announcement for Harris is a parent company for L3 Harris.
Yeah.
Harris Technologies, which years ago acquired what was then MACOM, that you guys remember. MACOM was a public safety United States International P25 type communication system. But Harris is a $1 billion company for DoD and defense contracts all around the world. They're the largest military provider for communications around the world before they ever even acquired MACOM. So the point is that is an offshoot, that it has its own life, and they do a fantastic job. They build systems around the country and around the world with a lot of success. They're very competitive. They may not be right here for Cumberland County, but they, one to the other, they're building P25 systems that work. And so is Motorola.
Very helpful.
Sure.
Mike, just to confirm, you folks are asking us to approve working with Motorola and line infrastructure, but I do see 7 municipalities that at this point are planning to purchase L3, which will still work.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Is the Motorola, generally speaking, more expensive than radios?
Well,
Because I'm wondering
Yeah.
if 7 out of 16 plan to purchase.
it's a good point. Those radios that they plan to purchase will work on the Motorola system. Yeah. So one to the other, it's more about functionality. They drive their own prices, and I imagine they probably get as much as they can for their radios based on whatever their marketing is. I don't have an impression of whether one's worth more than the other. I know that they all work on the system. Some people prefer L3 Harris, some people prefer Motorola, but I have worked with both radios on each other's systems around the country, and they both work fine. So it really is a preference at that point.
Okay, so it's truly a non-issue.
It's not an issue as far as operation.
Yes, as far as operation.
Vince,
Thank you.
obviously I'm here representing the Fire Police Association, but also I'm the radio man for Silver Spring Fire Company. Silver Spring is one of the people that said they were going to go with L3 Harris. We've had good luck with their equipment, not so much happy with how fast the warranty went out, and we bought a maintenance agreement, which we were no longer allowed to renew because of lack of parts available to fix our portables and things like that. Our mobile radios are way outdated. We're kind of holding off buying new equipment because we are hoping to do it all at one time. So we only got to train people on one portable, one mobile. The reason we selected or stated that our interest was in L3 Harris is at the radio demonstration, they were pushing their high-end radio and not really giving accurate pricing on our entry-level radios, which we're going to use for the people that are on fire trucks. So the cost appeared to be way different. However, some of the features that we have discovered since the rodeo was that some of those radio prices are in the Motorola radio that we don't need. So with the L3 Harris, if we added the features we needed, and then we removed the features from the Motorola radios that we did not need, now the playing field becomes a lot closer. They're not identical, but they become a lot closer And there's some features for the firefighters as far as microphones and stuff like that, that I think are going to be advantageous to us. So we are now leaning towards, strongly towards changing our minds to the Motorola radio, because we have been educated on the pricing structures, where they didn't have enough time to educate us to that at the rodeo.
Yeah, the first part
Anybody else
is,
in that same boat?
I'm sorry.
I'm curious if there's anybody else perhaps in that same.
I'm sure, because I was there for most of the event, both the radio board people and the people coming in, and heard people saying, well, I can't afford that radio. So they go over and start immediately talking to the L3 Harris people before they really had a chance to even ask questions. My fire chief did that immediately. I didn't do that. I wanted to weigh it, but my fire chief said, well, I can't afford that radio. That thing's a $7,000 radio and I need 50 of them. So you do the math. He went over and said he was going to do the L3 Harris. But when push comes to shove, he's going to fall back on what my recommendation is, because I'm sitting down and doing the numbers, and that's what he told me to do.
And we have the numbers, the list price numbers, and that's not going to be your final price, obviously. One of the reasons for collecting all that information is once we know the quantity, on your behalf, I'm going to go and talk to the vendor on trade-ins and negotiating pricing and try to do as good as we can for the agencies, even if they're not buying direct, because we realize that this is a big push. And by the way, that's for both vendors. Regardless of us working with Motorola on the infrastructure, if half the people come in and say they want to buy L3 Harris radios, then on your behalf, I'm going to talk to L3 Harris to try to get a better price for all of them.
Let's find number 3.
Exactly. Yeah.
Features drive that, Mike said. I mean, we took a look at features because different services, my EMS needs different features than my fire,
Right.
Davis, or police. So police need encryption. Not everybody needs that. So you look at the radio and see if it's provided or it's an add-on. And the other factor for us was the Motorola emergency button. When you push it on the radio, it activates the body camera. So because WatchGuard is a product of Motorola also, we get all we're WatchGuard shop. So there were some pieces that tie all of that together for us in addition to the quality piece. So you have to really do the diligence in looking at the features and the costs and the add-ons and what you take out and put on to really get to the bottom line.
Yep.
And it's different for each service, each department.
Anyone else? Questions?
No, this is very good, very helpful.
Good. Brian, you're the technical guy. Did you want to weigh in on anything here?
No, we were all a part as a team putting this together, so we kind of let Mike lay it out there. We really wanted to hear from the radio advisory board because they're the ones that have been there since day one, attending all these meetings, taking time out of their schedule and putting input into this. We wanted to make sure that it was collaborative, transparent, and teamwork. And like the resounding message has been, we need the first responders using these radios to have confidence in what they're using. So that's really the key takeaway.
Anything I'll say is, again, thanks to the radio advisory board. It's been a lot of hard work on them to put in, hours of doing the survey and research and I think we've been obviously waiting to get to this point to kind of, pick the vendor and head down the path with a particular vendor and what was best for the county and the responders. So obviously it's a big decision. So I guess our timeline ask would be, we could come as early as the workshop on October 14th with a pending approval the 17th, or our longer range plan, if there's research or additional discussion you want to have, would be by the November 3rd finance meeting. So we've kind of tentatively run the gamut of, a week to several weeks.
So that depends on what we have.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
So, like I said, we kind of had.
The sooner the better, so that we can get started with them. There's no reason to delay it any longer. If I told you to jump in, but you may need time to consider.
Sometimes we walk out of here and we think of things.
Exactly.
But we had all our answers.
100% exactly. Yeah.
But I think those dates sound
Yeah, next
fine
week's
as
workshop.
Yeah.
Stacy will work with you and.
And it'll be a straightforward ask that we
Yeah.
basically move forward with Motorola and the tri-county option. And then from there, that will kick off additional system planning, engineering, Motorola weighing in on what we actually need for tower sites. And then that will all work back into cost and eventually a purchase order contract with a vendor based on whether or not that can be negotiated.
Right, well, I'll just echo Bob's comments on our guests from the advisory board. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here today. I found your input we all found your input very helpful, I'm sure. And I appreciate the effort you put forward on that, especially being here today, because obviously we thought of some questions. So your experiences were exceedingly valuable in helping us today. So gives me much greater confidence in just taking the pay cuts. Fair. Last one.
I do have one. I feel like I should clarify the discussion on maintenance. We have an authorized service provider now providing maintenance on our current system. And that's a pretty extensive contract as it is right now for after hours response. And again, Brian does a fair amount with the technical team as far as heading off initial analysis, fixing what they can, but then we do have authorized service provider for major site maintenance and things like that, preventative maintenance throughout the year. So that's not really new with the new system. It will continue forward, and depending on, again, how much infrastructure there is, price may vary, but that'll be similar to what we have today.
Appreciate the clarification. All right, any last comments from anybody? Any final questions?
Thank you, guys.
Oh, I have a final question. Let's say that the population of this area suddenly explodes. Will we need more servers?
No, the system will have the ability to and the capacity to provide public safety long into the future, regardless of the actual the population.
We don't like to use the word explode in front of the public.
I honestly thought that, but I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
Let's just say the population would triple.
That's true.
I think there might be a couple of other departments that are cringing on that concept.
I would think the demand for services across the board would much outweigh having extra radios.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that brings us to a conclusion on that. Thank you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very informative session. So we'll move on to item 5. We're wrapping up here. Is there any additional business to come before the group today? Nothing. Staff, nothing. You guys, we're good? Okay, then in that case, we'll deal with for adjournment.
So moved.
Stand adjourned.